I look like I'm reverting back to puberty with my current face breakout and oddly placed sunburn, and that's kind of convenient because I'm talking about some of my experiences from a couple years ago, which is when I went through puberty. I guess you could say this is a story time, so we need some royalty-free music. Okay, I'm already getting distracted. I haven't uploaded in like 2 weeks, so I forgot how to do it. A lot of people ask how I got to the position that I'm in now with the various stuff that I work on, and basically what education and what jobs and stuff I've had to get to this spot. I dropped out of high school, so that's a good start. Maybe that'll be a separate video of my experience dropping out of high school. And I've had one job, but it wasn't a job because it wasn't paid. It was more of an internship. If you live near me, you could probably guess the museum. It has like an internship for basically high school age students where you get to help educate people and work with animals, especially reptiles and amphibians, and it's just this whole little program that they have. And my anxiety, especially my social anxiety, was at its peak at this point. And of course, to get this position, I had to do a group interview, which means that I answer questions in front of not only the people hiring, but the other people trying to get the position. I was terrified, and I actually basically panicked before I went inside, and I couldn't do it, but eventually I was able to force myself inside. I got there a couple minutes late, and I was horrified. I had to give a little presentation and answer all their questions, and I came out feeling really good about it, and I was so excited that I just started telling people about the position, like family and a couple friends. And this was going to be my first experience that was similar to a job and something I was really interested in. And then I got the email on when I'm starting, and I got declined. I was so confident after overcoming my anxiety that I thought I had already solidified my position. And no, I didn't get it. I've met a lot of people like a Repticon who say that they're in the program. I didn't get in the program. So instead, I went to a different museum, a cheaper museum. It seems to have less of a budget, and it's actually the museum that I grew up going to. So, okay, that works too. The way this museum works is you start as a basic volunteer and you work on the farm. And you literally just go from scooping manure and then you work your way up to more responsibility and more tasks. And I thought this was a great thing for me to do because at the time I was doing online school, and my parents also thought I needed a way to actually socialize more because although I did have online friends and I still prefer online friends, it basically wasn't a bad idea for me to actually get myself out there a little bit more in a physical form and work with people who are like-minded and like similar things. So I went for it. I went in, learned about the position, and I got it because not many people were really applying for it. They were kind of short on volunteers because not many people want to scoop cow poop all summer and winter. But I knew I had to start somewhere, and still, it seemed fun to work with any animals, so I went for it, and I started pretty quickly. And basically, my schedule was go there in the morning, start working, learn, get trained and everything, and then after that, I would do some schoolwork, and then I would do whatever I want, which was YouTube and making videos and working on my own projects and website and everything. And it was just this nice little routine, and so I got started, and yeah, I started on the farm. And this position became a lot weirder than I expected, which is the only reason I think it's worth making a video about, because I basically was an unpaid employee. I was doing the exact same work as all the employees. The difference was I was just younger, and so I thought that was a little weird from the start. But there were a lot of other things I didn't realize that were weird until now and until looking back on them. So I'm just gonna get into some different stuff that happened. So I start working on the farm. I get introduced to all the animals. They have pigs, goats, chickens, all the basic stuff. They even have a couple bulls or cows. I'm not sure which one, but they were small. Donkeys, llamas, alpacas. I don't know my farm animals. I don't really know the difference. But yeah, they had a pretty interesting variety. And I started kind of at the end of summer. So it was pretty warm, but cool some days. And it was nice weather to scoop some manure. I was basically just shoveling for like an hour, and it'd all get dumped into a trailer, and that trailer would then get hauled away to the compost area. I was often asked to come with the compost to then scoop it again into the compost pile, and they had just this really big compost facility area. So it was a lot of just strenuous manual labor, which I didn't mind. I wasn't in good shape. I'm still not in good shape, but it was a pretty good workout, and it was a way to start working with the animals. From there, I had to start cleaning the substrates, which was also just a lot of shoveling and raking, and putting new substrate in, which was more shoveling and raking. So it was basically just a full-time shoveling job that I wasn't paid for. But whatever, I know I'm surrounded by all these adults doing exactly what I'm doing. The difference is they're paid for it. But again, money wasn't my goal with this, so whatever. So I did this throughout the entire winter, and they basically said I'd probably be doing this for a few months, and eventually I would start to work with the indoor animals. These were the stuff I was more interested in, like reptiles and small mammals. I don't care about small mammals that much, but they knew that I kept animals. They had seen my videos, and they had seen my website, so they knew. I think at the time I had like 15 reptiles, and some of them were larger than what they had at the museum, so they knew that I had a pretty decent idea of what I was doing. Obviously, there's liability with this. They're working with minors in a museum with animals, so if something happens, they don't want to get sued, and that was understandable, but they were just so iffy about everything. I wasn't allowed in the most random enclosures. I was allowed with the chickens who would bite me constantly, but I wasn't allowed with the goats or the alpacas, which I'm aware that they are stronger animals, but then I was allowed with the alpacas and not the goats. And I'm aware of goats they can kind of bite you and stuff like pretty hard, but the alpacas were like taller than me. I am a very small human being. I was never allowed around the pigs or the cows or bulls until they were blocked off, same with the donkey, and they were just all these little things that made stuff really difficult because I just had to always get an actual employee to do these little things for me. The other bizarre thing is, after a couple months of me doing this, and it was getting colder and I was starting to freeze, they ended up hiring another employee, and they thought that this brand new employee, they thought he should train me for everything. And I thought I didn't know he was a new employee at first, but once I found out, I thought that was kind of weird because I knew better than him what to do, and yet I had to listen to this guy, and I don't know who put him in charge of me. So I ended up getting trained for all this stuff by someone who had been there shorter time than me, who clearly was not very trained either, which was a little iffy when it comes to safety and stuff. One issue actually is one of the managers got onto me and started criticizing the way I was shoveling. It was for my own sake. They said I was going to hurt myself because I was not shoveling the way that I was trained to do. And they were like, that is not how you shovel based on shovel training. Don't you remember that? I was like, shovel? What is shovel training? And apparently I missed a training. Like, they didn't think to show me shovel training. They just thought I knew how to shovel without training. I thought I did too, but apparently I was shoveling wrong. I never threw out my back or anything, but they were very upset with that. And the other weird thing is they didn't actually show me how then either. They just walked away. And I didn't really care because I wasn't hurting myself, like I said. At the same time, I was just a little anxious. I blame everything on my anxiety at this point in time, and I didn't want to have to actually ask how to shovel properly. So I kept shoveling like this for quite a while. Eventually, I was trusted with some other things, like giving the animals their food and vitamins, and I was taught specifically by the new employee which thing goes to which animal. I still remember, this was a couple years ago, but it was the large blue container to the goats and the small green container to the alpacas. And in these containers were their very specific, very refined vitamins for their species. It was easy for me to remember because it was just the large tub for the small animals and the small tub for the large animals. And you can guess where this is going. It turns out I was taught wrong. So for months, I think at least 4 months, I had been feeding goat vitamins to alpacas and vice versa. So they seemed fine. I hope they're still okay today. I don't know how big of a deal those vitamins are, so if you work with farm animals, let me know. Are they most likely dead, or did it not actually affect them? Like, is it like a Flintstone gummy, or is it like cyanide to them? I don't know. But either way, I got in a lot of trouble because one of the managers caught me doing this, and they were pretty angry. And I said, this is exactly how what's-his-name taught me. I literally don't remember what his name was. And they were like, no, that's impossible. There's no way you were taught that. That's incorrect. Here's the new way. And then off they went. They were very busy. They were very overworked. And so they really didn't spend that much time showing me. But so far I shoveled incorrectly, and I was giving the wrong vitamins to the wrong animals for about 4 months. So That's quirky. Also, I forgot to mention, the guy training me ended up mixing things up so often, for example, the vitamins, that at one point I figured I would actually just start switching what he tells me to do. For example, if he tells me it's down on the left path, it's on the right path. And I'd go down, and what do you know? The thing I was looking for is on the right path. Or if he told me the goats needed to be cleaned and that the donkey is done, it would be the opposite. The donkey had not been cleaned and the goats were. So yeah, I learned how to work with it because nobody was listening when I would say that he was actually just teaching me incorrectly. I don't know how nobody else noticed that, but I'd improvise, adapt, and overcome. Okay, back to the video. And again, back to these weird little rules and regulations they had. Completely understandable. They even gave me a little spiel about pedophilia. Like, I don't know if they had an issue in the past, but they felt the need to specifically let me know if I start getting, like, what would the word be? Lured in? Groomed, I guess? I don't know. But that's besides the point. That's not what were they, why did they teach, what was going on in that museum? But either way, I was not allowed, like, around certain animals that might hurt me, which would be a pretty big liability problem if that happened, if a pig just came towards me. One time they actually let the pigs out, and I panicked a little bit because this big beefy male pig just sprinted straight at me, and he had these little tusks, and I was kind of terrified. Turns out I was just in front of his like wifey pig, and he was upset that he couldn't see her, so he like barreled through me just to get to her, and then he was fine. So just I knew not to get in between the pigs. But I wasn't allowed around these animals, and yet they thought that the best activity for me to do when I came was in the middle of winter, in the freezing cold, on frozen ladders about 15 or 20 feet up, with no gear or protection, that I should be the gutter cleaner. I thought I signed up for working with animals, but I'm aware that stuff has to be done with all sorts of stuff. And I know that better now than ever, because now that I work with animals in my own company, I'm aware how many little things there are where I don't even end up dealing with animals at all because there's so many other little activities. But again, why was I put in charge of cleaning the gutters in 30-degree, like, freezing AC weather? I don't know, but I ended up basically climbing on the roof and clearing gutters out by hand. I didn't have any gloves, so I was just digging through by hand, and my hands were cold. Okay. And I was on top of the buildings with the animals in them, so it would have been kind of ironic if I fell off the building into the animals. Again, 15 feet up, that's not that bad. People go on ladders 50, 100 feet up all the time to do work. But I didn't know what I was doing. They just told me to go on the ladder and start scooping leaves out by hand. So maybe I'm complaining too much, but I thought that was a little weird that they were okay with me doing stuff like that. And it was kind of constant. They always had these weird little tasks for me to do. So for the most part, it was just a lot of hauling stuff, a lot of digging and shoveling and scooping and raking, all in this super cold weather. It was these metal poles, so my hands were freezing, which you'd probably know if you've like worked in any form of construction. Your hands are gonna freeze if they're holding something cold, even with gloves. It was kind of miserable, and every day I came home, I was exhausted, and I didn't even get any schoolwork done. But I wasn't complaining. I was getting some experience in and getting leaves out of gutters. But from here, I got excited, and they actually started needing help inside. Thank God I can get out of the cold. Basically what I had to do, again, there weren't that many volunteers. When I started, there were like 3, and at this point, I was like the only one that came on these certain days, because they had basically scheduled days for everyone. And apparently my day was just me, and so I would go out to the barn, work with some of the employees, scoop everything from every animal, change all the beddings, feed everything, and then once we finished that up as quickly as possible, I'd run inside, and I was in charge of dishes. Animals eat a lot, and this museum had a lot of animals, and they had a single kitchen, and I was the single little busboy. So what they would do is all these employees would constantly be streaming in with these piles of dishes, and they'd always, like, some of them felt bad and they'd apologize every time they put this massive pile down. Again, these aren't like human dishes, these aren't like at a restaurant, which I'm sure are disgusting, and I would prefer working with the animal ones, but that also meant a lot of rotten food, a lot of old fruits and vegetables, a lot of rat corpses, a lot of fur just stuffed in stuff, feathers. This is stuff that animals are eating. They had possums and raccoons, and they had interesting diets. And my job was to scoop all this stuff into the waste. And then from here, I for some reason had to hand wash every dish and then put it in a sanitizer and then take it out and let it dry and then put it away. I don't know why I had to hand wash it and put it in a sanitizer. It wasn't just like rinse the debris off, but I'm sure that's standard. I didn't expect how much work it would be. And sanitizers are hot, so I was kind of boiling in that back room. And as soon as I would finish the pile of dishes and I'd get to go work on more interesting activities, someone else would haul a bunch of dishes in. So that was an interesting process. I had never worked with something like that, and I honestly enjoyed it. It was just a fun activity to be able to do. Just like, it's this monotonous thing. You just sit there and wash and sanitize and dry and wash and sanitize and dry and see all the weird foods that come in from the leftover animals. And so at this point I was getting a little impatient because I had been here for like 5 months or something at this point, and I still hadn't gotten to actually work with any animals or any indoor animals. So I'd remind the managers that I still haven't, and they just always said, yeah, I'm gonna get to it, we're just really busy right now. And I believe them. I still think that's true, but it wouldn't have taken long for them to train me. It's not like they trained me for the other stuff anyway, which I'll get onto more later, but I tried to hold off and I tried to be patient with it. So I just kept doing barn and dishes and barn and dishes. And then one day, one of the higher ups got kind of overwhelmed with some meal prep. So they pulled me away from dishes and asked me to prep the foods for the animals. And I was like, oh yeah, no problem. And I got to work on this. They had just had all these sheets laid out, all the stuff that each animal could eat and the portions. And it was these really big bowls of stuff. And I'd probably prep 20 to 50 dishes depending on which animals are eating that day. And this was really cool and it was really fun. And from then on, once they saw me start doing all of this food prep, that became a thing on my list. The thing is, they didn't take anything else off my list, so it was just added on. So I was just spending more time and more energy, and I had to do it very quickly because they needed the dishes and the barn and all the food done like before halfway through the day. I would rush through the barn, do all the dishes, and then do all the food prep. And the food prep was mostly fruits and vegetables, which is kind of ironic because I am terrible at identifying them. I often had to ask what stuff was and like find people. And speaking of finding people, that reminds me, I originally, one of the reasons I started in this position was to be able to socialize more, but I was alone the whole time. I was in this kitchen by myself. I wasn't complaining, but it was a little counterproductive to one of the reasons I started. Well, kind of both reasons, which was working with animals and socializing. And I was actually in a kitchen all day just prepping food by myself at this point. But it was super fun, and this was my favorite routine yet. It was freezing outside, so being able to come in and be by that nice warm sanitizer was great. And then I would do all the food prep. It was also a lot of insects. There was this massive freezer. It was just one of the like normal walk-in restaurant freezers. I always got scared because there was there an emergency latch? I don't think there was an emergency latch inside the freezer because I looked for it. I assume they have to have one, but I never bothered asking where it was, so I don't know if there was an emergency latch. But either way, it was pitch black in there and the light was on the outside, so people would always be flicking the switch off on me. And I was always paranoid that if they turned the switch off, they might lock the freezer. So I never got locked in, but there was no reception. I don't think I would have died. I think I'm just exaggerating, but I would have been stuck in a 0-degree freezer. 0-degree Fahrenheit freezer. That's terrifying. Either way, never got locked in. And yeah, there was a lot of food in there. And they just had the normal insects and stuff. And at the time, I was kind of scared of superworms. So I got over my fear of superworms through this because I had to just start dumping them in by hand. And superworms bite me a lot. So that was kind of annoying. But yeah, there was some annoying stuff. Like I just realized the sun is coming up. It's 6 a.m. I stayed up till 6 because I thought I could like DoorDash some Chick-fil-A, and then I realized it's Sunday. Anyway, something that started happening is a zookeeper would come in and they'd be visibly upset at me, and they'd bring like this dish that I prepped. Like say it was the possum dish, and they were like, "Can you please stop giving the possum tomatoes? It does not like tomatoes." And I was like, okay. On the list it says it eats tomatoes. It doesn't say what it likes or dislikes. It just says what it eats. And I just grabbed the easiest thing that there is to cut up. And I always tried to mix it up every time, like give them some variety. But zookeepers would get upset that I was giving them the animals what they didn't like to eat, even though I had no idea. The only way I knew what wasn't being eaten was because I was the one doing the dishes. But I never worked with the animals. I didn't know what they liked to eat. So that was kind of annoying, but I just brushed it off and kept making the foods. So yeah, there was a lot of just random criticism over menial things, but I'm sure that's way worse in actual jobs, like say a fast food job. I'm sure it's like 50 times worse than this. So I'll count my blessings. So my routine at this point was get there, go to the barn, finish the barn, do all the dishes, do all the meal prep, do all the dishes again, and then be very exhausted and come home. Like I said, I was very anxious in this time, and it's that kind of anxiety where it's completely dumb, completely useless, worthless stuff that you're unable to do. For example, ask where the water is, or ask if they have water bottles, or ask where the bathroom is, because I hated having to ask for things like that. And so I would basically try and hold it all day, and I was drinking all these fluids to stay hydrated, and I multiple times I had to stop on the way home just to pee, like on the side of the road, because I couldn't hold it, and that's how pitiful I was. So I don't know, I admitted to peeing on the side of the road because I was too anxious to ask where a bathroom was. Also, something I probably also should not admit is I think I am a safe driver. At the time, I was driving a very old Jeep, and so if you did not drive this safely, you were gonna die. And this Jeep had the basics. It had traction control. I think it had, no, it did not have, it might have had cruise control. The radio did not work. I don't think the heating worked. And basically what I'm getting at is there's not really any safety features. And I would overwork myself so hard that I'd be so exhausted, and the drive was about 35 minutes home. And I would go straight home because I would be hungry and I just want to get started on my schoolwork and stuff. Okay, not really. I wanted to get started on my videos and stuff. And I fell asleep one time while driving. I fell asleep coming into an intersection, and it was a red light, and I started driving through. It turned green. I kept going. I forgot to turn because, what do you know? My eyes were open, but I was asleep, because something that actual brick and mortar schools taught me is that sleeping with your eyes open is indeed possible, and I was very good at it thanks to math class. So I fell asleep with my eyes open while driving, and ran off the road. The thing that jolted me awake is I happened to see a cop car far in the distance, and I can't even remember if its lights were on or not, but basically seeing the cop car jolted me, and then I realized, oh, I'm actually driving a vehicle. So pro tip, even if you're anxious, try not to drive while you're drowsy. Just pull over and take a nap if you can. So yeah, I would pull over to pee, and I fell asleep on the way home one time. But anyway, I come back to work one day. I'm gonna call it work. I want to have some pride in my work, even if I wasn't paid for it, even if I was just a worthless volunteer. I was prepping the dishes as usual. One of the managers came in and needed to use the sink, so I think I was cutting cucumber. So she said, hey, I just need to use the sink real quick, and I was like, okay. And so I stepped back, and I was just cutting the cucumber in my hand. The knives were ridiculously sharp, so it's really easy. Like, as you probably know, dull knives are more dangerous than sharp ones, because the sharp ones, I had such good precision, and I had pretty good experience with knives in general. Like, I used to like bushcraft a lot, so I had no problem cutting a cucumber in my hand with a knife. But the manager looked like she just saw God, and she panicked and freaked out on me, and started yelling about how I should have learned this in knife training, that I should never, ever, ever cut anything off of a cutting board, let alone in the air, in my hand. That is a complete, massive hazard. It wasn't like I was, like, dealing with a loaded gun or something. It was just a knife in my hand, but she flipped out, and I said, knife training? She was like, yeah, the thing you have to do before you prep meals. I was like, oh, I didn't learn how to do this. And then she looked even more concerned. She's like, what do you mean you didn't learn how to do this? And I was like, well, someone just asked me to prep the food one day. So I said, yeah, and I started doing it. And now I've been doing it for 3 months. She didn't really do anything. She just said, oh. And then she left. So I think one of the problems was there were like too many higher ups, and they all thought the other person was going to deal with something. Because she got upset, got angry, criticized what I was doing, and then just left. She didn't train me. She didn't teach me proper knife training skills. She didn't teach me how to prep the food. Turns out I wasn't even supposed to prep some of the food, like lemurs. Apparently lemurs are extremely sensitive, and in order to do anything for lemurs, you had to get multiple tests in advance, including, I don't remember what the tests were, but you had to get like a blood test just to make sure you're even healthy enough to touch the lemur stuff. And there were just these little things for different animals, and I never did any of that because one of the higher ups just asked me to start prepping the meals one day, and I was like, yeah, no problem. It seemed very basic, and I caught on very well, other than accidentally giving the possum tomatoes when it doesn't like tomatoes. I'm sorry. Speaking of training, I still wasn't trained to work with the indoor animals. This was like 9 or 10 months in, and I still enjoyed the routine. I was exhausted. It was getting pretty boring and mundane. But the animals still got to eat. There's no other volunteers on this day, and I was just doing the barn. And actually, at this point, I think there was a couple volunteers, but they were just so busy at this point and so overwhelmed that I still was just doing barn dishes, food, dishes, and I was okay with that. I just didn't mind. It was starting to get warmer again, and it was way better than doing this in the freezing cold, because I slipped on the snow a lot, and I'd still ask about the indoor training, and he'd be like, yeah, I'll get to it. And so this guy, he would always like drive down with me to the compost to help scoop it or whatever, and he'd always have these like, I don't know, like fatherly talks with me about how I need to finish school and everything, and because he could tell that I was starting to do less and less schoolwork at this point, because I was in a real school and then an online school, and then I just stopped doing school entirely. He didn't know that I had actually stopped like 4 months ago, and I was just doing full-time YouTube, making like a few $100 a month, and that I was hoping to make it my career, because he didn't like that idea. He needed to see me complete high school and go off to college, and I was confused why he was always pushing this, especially since he's not at all related to me. He doesn't know anything about me other than the basics and having seen my videos, but he was really pushing it. So I'd be like, yeah, I'm keeping up. I did my math last night. I even did some this morning. And over time I realized he was just, he didn't say this, but based on how he acted and how he talked and looked, I think he was just miserable at this place. He was one of the highest people at this location, and he just seemed sad and depressed, and I kind of had like a connection to another job he wanted, and he asked me to talk to them about getting that job, but it was not at all something he was qualified for. Like, he was an animal management person, and I don't know where he is now, but hopefully he quit because he hated his job. I have nothing against the museum or this person, but I just felt kind of bad for him, and he was like trying to undo his regrets through me or something by trying to get me to finish school. But nope, I was lying about it all, and I wasn't doing schoolwork at all. So at this point, it was clear no training was coming, and I had actually seen the indoor animals, because I forgot to mention I got upgraded to the job of sweeping and mopping the entire building. Not the like the behind the scenes building. And so basically they'd unlock the doors for me to get to the animal areas, like the behind the scenes animal exhibits. And they had really pretty exhibits. They had very nice looking reptile setups and stuff from the perspective of the visitor. And then I got to see the behind the scenes, and it was actually just these dingy little 10 and 20 gallon aquariums just pushed up to the glass, and it was pretty gross back there. There were bugs everywhere, it was dirty, and there was constantly stuff all over the floor that I was mopping up, constantly catching bugs. I'm sure the bugs weren't a big deal, but it didn't smell great, and it was a mess back there. It was just kind of funny how much security they put into this. Like, for example, there was a copperhead enclosure. I stumble across copperheads pretty often in North Carolina. Not as often as other people, but they're here, and they're common. They're not really dangerous if you know what you're doing, or if you just have common sense. And everything except the alligator was very contained, locked and everything, but they felt the need to lock the door just to get to that area for me to sweep, and so they had to unlock it, and then it was a pain. I just thought it was funny how much work they put into keeping you safe from certain animals, and then they have you do all these other weird tasks and forget to teach you how to use a knife, I guess. So yeah, I just kept on going, and at this point I was putting a ton of time into YouTube and a ton of time into, I don't know what else I was doing then. I guess just like making merchandise and some of the similar stuff that I'm doing now, but just whatever was happening then, just on my personal projects. And I was getting zero socialization. The very few times there were people in the kitchen with me or on the barn, or on the farm in the barn, I was too anxious to say anything anyway. So I was just getting no benefit out of it. And I don't remember how I stopped showing up. Maybe I think I was sick one time or something, and I told them in advance, and then I never went back. And I still get like the employee email updates like every month to my email. So I'm still on the list. Looks like nothing has really changed there. This was a couple years ago. What was the point of this? I don't know. I just thought I'd share my single job experience. Again, unpaid, more of a volunteer position. And it was like my backup position because I didn't even get the program that I wanted to get into. But I don't regret, I don't feel sad about that at all today. I don't think I would have liked it that much anyway. And honestly, I preferred this one. It was some really cool manual labor, really just basic grungy work. And again, there's way worse work I could have been doing, but I think it was better than doing it at this more fancy museum with nice programs and stuff, because it was slightly more grounding. I still need more grounding, but it was a start, and I enjoyed it. So yeah, that was my closest thing to a job that I thought was an animal job, but actually it was just scooping and raking and sanitizing dishes and burning myself on the sanitizer. And I did cut myself with a knife a couple times, I will admit. I sliced a decent part of my thumb off, but you can't even see it. It healed up fine. I didn't tell anyone because I don't know why I didn't tell anyone. Well, that's it. If you want to support me, you can join Patreon. You can check out the merchandise. Just check out the description. There's a ton of stuff in it. Patreon, you get early access to videos. Usually, I've been slacking, so sorry about that. Private live streams. I stream games sometimes, like Stardew Valley I streamed most recently, and Sims 4. You can also contact me directly, which I don't really respond anywhere else. So yeah, you got to pay me to do it. And again, there's some merchandise designs that you can get shipped to your door, just like every other merchandise. It is 6:30 a.m. The sun rose while recording this video. So yeah, I think I'll sprinkle in more videos like this. I'd like to also talk about my experience quitting school and dropping out. So that would be like the sister video to this. So if you're interested in that, maybe you'll enjoy future stuff on the channel. But that's it. Thanks for listening to this pointless video. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching or listening. Thanks for tasting.